Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the world. Today is the third Saturday of the month, and so, as per my schedule, I will be making a video about nationalism in a South Asian country. The country I want to talk about today is Sri Lanka, and today I want to talk about the economic crisis in Sri Lanka and its impact on Sri Lanka's as a nation. Today is uh, this month, uh, economic crisis was declared. Emergency was declared by the president of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. This is because of various reasons. Some are that Sri Lanka's foreign exchange reserves have reduced, and um, inflation has gone up, has increased, and yeah, and exports are down. The Sri Lankan rupee has decreased against the dollar and is being floated on the black market. Like the economy is just bad. Now, I want to talk about this from a nationalistic perspective, how this will impact the nation of Sri Lanka, and what, as a nationalist, I think is the best way forward for Sri Lanka. An economic crisis happens in a nation due to various factors. One of them is that uh, one, the an amount, basically we have to look at the basics of economics, which is scarcity and supply and demand. Scarcity happens when there's not enough resources to provide for the people, and supply and demand are the forces by which goods are supplied to the economy and consumers demand those goods and services. Now, what has happened in Sri Lanka is that the government has simply made various decisions that are in an attempt to control the economy, and I'll explain how this is, in my view, a problem and wrong policy developed by the government of Sri Lanka. For example, they have placed import bans on various goods. This is not good, at least as a whole. I think that a nation should have the right to ban imports. It is every government's power, but only if those goods can be made in that country and are essential for that nation's national security. This includes uh, goods like steel, iron, military weapons, computers, hardware and software, etc. Things that are needed for a country in case there is a national emergency of a threat of war. Whatever can help a nation that time. It is not good for a nation to be dependent on others countries for those materials. And so, because if they do have a war and those other countries, sorry, do not export these goods to them, then they will suffer in the war. They will not be able to win and they will lose. Therefore, it is important that for all the minerals and materials that are necessary to protect the nation in the war should be produced within the country. Now, however, in an ideal situation, you should be able to trade these goods as well, import and export these goods for the financial benefit of the importers and exporters. But when there is a emergency when another country is not employing fair trade practices in its exports to your country, then I think protectionism in the form of import bans is necessary. However, what Sri Lanka has done is not correct. They have banned items that are not necessary for national security. And this has, for example, they have banned chemical fertilizers. This is so that they can shift their farming to organic farming. Now, I have learned about organic farming, and I do agree with its proponents that it is healthy, it is environmentally friendly, and has benefits. However, there are also negatives related to this, in that these are this is often more expensive to produce crops from organic farming, and that it's more difficult, and that's why many farmers use pesticides instead of going by organic. And so I think that this should not be forced by the government, that this should actually be choice available to the farmers to either use organic farming or non-organic farming, such as chemical fertilizers. And I think that this sudden ban has hurt the country and is causing a food shortage in the country. We are seeing reports of empty shelves empty in supermarkets in Sri Lanka, which is very scary and makes the situation much more volatile. Now, another thing that's happened is that the government has employed the army to prevent hoarding of goods, to transport goods throughout the nation. I believe that this is not necessary and that this is not a good decision because um, because the army is not supposed to be involved in law enforcement problems like hoarding of goods. That is the police's job in any country, and the army should strictly be focused on defending against outside threats and internal threats to the security of the country. And hoarding is not a direct threat to a government of a country. And so it should be handled by the local police in that region where hoarding and selling in black market is happening, and that giving the army this power lead will unfortunately cause some of the army men and women to abuse the power they have and commit atrocities. This will bring a bad name to the Sri Lankan army, make the people of Sri Lanka lose respect for the army, and hurt the unity of the country, which is not what the country needs right now. The country needs to be united and strong and has to make some good decisions. I think one good decision would be that the government should lift the import bans on chemical fertilizers. This will allow farmers to grow their crops any way they want and will allow food to grow faster and to feed the people of Sri Lanka. And also, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has to help us reduce the fall in the Sri Lankan rupee. Not as because I'm not expert in finances, I can't really explain how should be done. However, I do think that the central bank would do well to simply to allow the Sri Lankan rupee to move freely in the market to whatever value that it gets. That way, if it's not being manipulated by the central bank, then whatever rate, exchange rate that the Sri Lankan rupee meets with the American dollar, that would be the most accurate rate because that would be determined by the supply and demand forces of the market, which are neutral, impartial forces. And so this would be the most accurate rate that you can get. And if people buy and sell foreign exchange according to the accurate rates, then they'll get the proper value for their money, and this will help them and prevent them from suffering any financial losses. But this is just one idea. If you have other ideas, please put it in the comments. I'd like to read them. Now, about the current government in Sri Lanka, it is a nationalist government. Rajapaksa and Mahinda Rajapaksa and the whole Rajapaksa family have claimed to be nationalists, to have defeated terrorism in the form of LTTE, and that they are true patriots for that. Now, this can be compared to the previous Sri Lankan government, which was in some ways uh, obedient to the global community, the United Nations. They allowed, they they admitted to several crimes against the Tamil people, and they used the Tamil people in Sri Lanka as an issue and claimed to be more liberal and progressive. However, even they, during their term, did not impress the Sri Lankan people and were therefore kicked out of the office, and Rajapaksa came back. So, yeah, and the problem is that the Rajapaksa family has taken over the government. It's entirely run by the Rajapaksa family, which causes the nation's interests to be beholden to just one family. And so that family will put its own interests above those of the nation. This is a very bad situation for a country to be in, and actually brings into doubt the nationalist credentials and claims of the Rajapaksa government. I wish well for any Sri Lankan viewer, and I hope that the economy improves and that everyone can have a prosperous, wealthy life in Sri Lanka. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.